Does anyone know what Alzheimer's disease is?
It's a disease that makes you very forgetful.
Very good. So this is the dictionary definition of Alzheimer's disease. It's a progressive mental deterioration that can occur in the middle or old age due to a generalized deterioration of the brain. It is the common misconception about Alzheimer's disease is most people think it's part of the aging process, but it's not. These are the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. So people with Alzheimer's disease are very disoriented, they're confused, they have memory problems, they're very anxious, they don't know what's happening. Can anyone tell me the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's disease? This is not something I expect you to know. So the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's disease is someone with dementia will forget where their key is. Someone with Alzheimer's disease will forget what a key is. In a minute, I'm going to show you an object recognition slideshow. And when you see the object, you're just going to call out the name of the object. So the slides are going to become faster and faster, so you can see how much harder your brain has to work when it has Alzheimer's disease.
Lion, apple, couch, booze, student bio, kindergarten.
So you see how, imagine if you have Alzheimer's, your brain starts processing things like objects much slower. So you see how your brain's had to work a lot harder to try to keep up with the flow of images. The way you can think about a neuron is you can think about a neuron like gossip. So if you are a teenage girl, your dendrites are like the ears, it's what you hear, and then the neuron processes it, and then the axon tells it to your friend. And then you've got a different neuron, the ears, the gossip comes in, it processes it, and it goes out. So I'm going to do a little demonstration to show you what happens when you have Alzheimer's disease. Can I have 2 volunteers? Here's your chopstick. Here's your chopstick. So these 2 girls are neurons, and this pretzel is a thought. So if we start the thought on her chopstick, you have to transfer it to your friend. So you need to get your chopstick through one of those holes and put it onto. See? Now when you don't have Alzheimer's disease, it's very easy. Now, we have mild Alzheimer's disease. So now, you were able to help neuron 1 get the thought. So now you gotta get that thought onto her chopstick.
Is it on?
Yep. So it's possible to think when you have Alzheimer's disease. It's just harder. Now let's see what happens when we have severe Alzheimer's disease. Now, neuron 2 is also affected. Okay, now transfer the neuron, transfer the thought. See how the thought goes away. Very good, thank you very much. You can see how when your neurons can't communicate, it's a lot harder to think. So there are 2 types of Alzheimer's disease. Early onset, or familial Alzheimer's disease, and late onset Alzheimer's disease. So early onset Alzheimer's disease happens before you're 65, and then late onset happens after you're 65. Here are the stages of Alzheimer's disease. So in mild, you kind of can't sleep, can't remember things like names or dates really well. Someone can remind you and help you. So someone with moderate Alzheimer's disease will have difficulty with logical responses, with behavior regulations, impulse control. With advanced Alzheimer's disease, you can't recognize objects, you can't recognize people. It's very, very sad. Go to the next slide. All right, so plaques and tangles. So these are what happens in your brain to cause those 2 neurons to stop communicating. So when you have a plaque, there's these different proteins in your body that are being made all the time. In plaques, when they're processed incorrectly, there's these little chunks that just start floating around. It's like if you can imagine someone driving a car on a one-way road. and they hit something. So that car is going to explode. And now they've got all this little shrapnel all over the place. Now the next car that tries to drive down the same road is also going to hit that car. And now we've got a bigger pileup. So when that keeps happening, that forms a plaque. These are the drugs you'll be prescribing to your patients. Each of these colored Skittles corresponds to a different drug, and I have a little chart on which color goes with which. Right, next. So this is the other thing we're doing. Let me grab the model. So DBS, or deep brain stimulation, is something that's in clinical trials right now. So right here, we have our brains. Each pair, I think, is going to be able to get a jello brain. And you're going to get a toothpick, and you have to put the toothpick through each of the beads. In actual DBS, there's a probe that hits a certain part of the brain, and then there's a little electrical thing that will shock it. Because it's like if a certain part of your brain is being really lazy and you shock it, it'll shock it into like action. Each of you is going to get a patient. In this first round, not every patient has Alzheimer's disease. It is your job to figure out if your patient has Alzheimer's disease or not. Inside each of the folders, I'll borrow this for a second, there's a little mini half sheet that says your patient number, their name, their age, and their sex. So then you're going to read the little story and figure out if the person has Alzheimer's disease and why.
Miss Paula Rodriguez.
And does Paula Rodriguez have Alzheimer's disease?
Yeah.
Why?
She doesn't remember the color of her house that she lived as a child. She doesn't remember what she did the day before. She takes the wrong bus to the senior center.
Yes, you are correct. So for the first station, you have to figure out if your patient has early onset or late onset Alzheimer's disease, and then you're going to write in the little box why. In the next station, everyone is going to move over here, their goals, and so now with your answers to questions 1 and 2, you're going to prescribe your patients different medications. So I have like my chicken scratch handwriting saying which medication is which. So Dopenzil is the red ones, and then if you decide to prescribe your patient Dopenzil, take 1 or 2 and put them in your bowl. And then also write down what side effects your patient will need to look out for. Your jello brain has 3 little beads in it, and even though in DBS you'd only use 1 probe, for the sake of having more than one person be able to try it, we have 3 beads. So you're going to take your probe, and you have to stick it through your brain and into your bead.
I got 2.
Oh, wow.
No, it's so easy.
Good job. Extra points for you.
You did it.
Okay, so our patient is Lawrence Hamilton. He's 88 and he's a male. We prescribed him with late onset Alzheimer's and moderate stage because he still remembers to tutor, but he thinks he's in the World War II and sometimes forgets where he is. And we prescribed him galantamine, and then if it progresses, memantine and Donepezil. And we did a successful DBS surgery.
Very good.
So, patient is number 1A. Her name is Miss Paula Rodriguez, age 75, female. She has late onset Alzheimer's. She's in the stage mild because she has sleeping problems, and she's disoriented and has some short-term memory loss. We prescribed her to rivastin and galantamine.
You could know someone who has Alzheimer's at some point.
Yeah. So as our medicine gets more and more advanced, we're living for longer and longer. So the amount of people is with Alzheimer's disease and dementia is growing exponentially. And we just, at the moment, don't have the resources to treat them.
Also, because we might need to know about this because we can like identify people who have it, and then we can help them like when we're older and we know about all this stuff.